Hi, welcome to Growth Marketing Chat. Today I'm here with David Atkin. David is the co-founder and CEO of Adalo. Adalo is a no-code app platform for businesses and entrepreneurs to be able to develop mobile applications and bring them to market faster and in a more affordable way. David, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm really excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here as well. Thanks for having me.
So today we are going to talk about launching a new product, especially a very innovative product like yours. When you launched, there were not really a lot of other, companies that were proposing a no-code platform for developing mobile applications, and there was not really necessarily market. People didn't know that they could do that. So my question for you is, how did you go about your launch? I know that you did a soft launch. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, let's see. So, yeah, definitely the term no code was not a thing back then. When we were first talking about it, we were just saying like without code. Now it's like its own category now. It's such a big change, those little words. But yeah, so, when we first started, people were definitely very skeptical. I remember, we would chat with some people about it. They would say, "Oh, well, okay, like that sounds awesome. I don't really know." And I even remember, I think it was a little bit, kind of in between before we had our like public launch, but even some of our like first ads that we started to run to see if people were interested, like people were like commenting on them like this is propaganda, and like we're like flagging them, and it was like wait, like no, like I promise it's not. So yeah, there's definitely skeptical sides of things, and we also knew that we were tackling a very large problem, which meant it was going to be a long time to develop something that had enough functionality to get there. Sometimes you know your MVP, you actually can build it, really small and really quickly. Sometimes there are MVPs that take longer, like the if you think about it, like we're letting other people build, right? So our MVP had to be able to build other people's MVPs, right? So like it kind of had to be a little bit more advanced, but that, didn't mean then that we didn't want to launch at all, right? So that's when we kind of started thinking, okay, we want to be open. We're up there. We were on, you could find us on the internet. We weren't really like shouting it from the rooftops at that point. But part of our strategy was, and it was always a big focus, is just like how, and some of the best advice I can give is just like, how can you get your first like paying customer? Like what do you need to do to just get somebody who like will really be using your product? And that might mean doing a lot of manual things for them that in the end are not going to be the manual things that are automated out, or features that you add that get rid of those things. But if you look at your entire product, what can you do yourself? And for us, that meant building out apps for people. So I actually, because I'm the one on the team, founding team that I couldn't code, right? So I would actually go to startup events. I'd fly across the nation, going to some startup events, looking for founders that that needed help building an app, right? And I would say, well, I can do it for you. And then I would even go into like local businesses around here, or just kind of connect with people. And I would kind of always be thinking of like, oh, what kind of app could they have that would really help? And then I would kind of pitch them on those things. And then we would like build it for them, right? So now we're, Adalo is a completely self-serve SaaS product. We don't do that at all anymore, but we were just always trying to figure out how can we get customers as fast as possible. That was probably, some of the biggest strategy we had during our soft launch was after we would get those, and then, we would start to build it out. I would realize like, like we don't have this. Can you build that? And then we would, our dev co-founder, he would build it. And then, we started to sell our apps for more and more, right? At the very beginning, we were not really confident. I was like, how much are people going to pay for this? And then, be like, okay, how about $500, right? For like an entire app, even though like an average app
Wow.
costs like $70,000 at the time. But like, we were just like, it doesn't matter. Like, you just have to get them to pay something so that it's real, right?
Mhm.
That's like a fraction of the cost of what it was. So they were like, all right, but they were like, sure, let's try this thing out. So, and
Right.
then we would get more and more confident and, charge 1,000 for the next one, 5,000, 10,000, it started to get to a point where we were charging a decent amount for them. So we were showing true value there. And we were also having to develop less and less like workarounds or features for them
Mhm.
as it was going. So we started to realize like, okay, like we just sold that kind of expensive app and we didn't really have to develop any features for it, right? Like I was like, oh, like you can do it, right? So
Right.
it really did prove what was necessary when we just truly built out whatever the workflow was.
Yeah. So it's amazing. So by doing this, you kind of really felt your customers' pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's really important because a lot of the time, if you can't use your own product, you don't know what the customer is going through at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find your product market fit while getting paid for doing it. So it's kind of a magical model that you have here. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And definitely like, we weren't um we weren't really breaking like it wasn't like we were like, wow, this is like a super
Right,
successful
right, right.
business that was like going to kind of take off, making that. It was still would take you some time to make some of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
you know we were trying to build out the platform too, so you don't have to find, like, I would say, like the perfect magical model of, well, obviously if you can find like one that's totally profitable and scales right away, fantastic for you.
Right.
But like I also would I don't necessarily want the takeaway, for it could work differently for everyone, but it doesn't have to be like you're like super profitable. It's just like just the act of like either just getting paid something, so that's a real that customer that you're working with really is like, no, I do value you. It's like, again, like the first couple of ones we charged, if the average app costs 70,000 and we're like, hey, we'll do it for you for $500, like like that's not like a true market value, but it was at least like
Mm-hmm.
just something, right? So that they had a little skin in the game, that they were proving that this really was kind of a valuable thing. So yeah, that was super kind of instrumental. And to your point, like you learn things about your product and like around your product that are not even like part of what your features maybe are, but are things that are related to it when you're starting to do that. So for example, right, like we you still have to, after you make your apps on a dollar, you have to submit them to Apple and Google, and they go into the stores, and you own the apps, so obviously you have to submit them yourselves. Like that's part of Apple and Google's policies. And like, so like that's like not part of our product, but like I started to empathize and like understand like how difficult that was. What are the tricky things that maybe you run into there when you are submitting it? um you know Helping them figure out how to find their first customers or run betas with their things, then start, like, that's again not part of our product, but now part of like our tutorial strategy and our like education strategy, because we know that those things, that you'll need help with them, or that the more help you get, the more successful you'll be. So yeah, you definitely learn things that are even like not part of your kind of true product core sense as well.
Right, right, right. And you just gain a deeper understanding of your market, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's great. And so, would you have any advice for other, entrepreneurs like you that want to have kind of a softer launch instead of, you know, developing a product for 2 years and then launching? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so like I was saying, step one is definitely like thinking about your entire product, and then saying, you always have these amazing ideas for all these different parts, right? And saying to yourself, okay, what eventually will be automated, right? Or easy to do on your own, right? So for example, like we had to compile all of the code to actually get it to the Apple and Google Play, right? Totally manually. Or like, we wanted them to be building it eventually, but like we built it for them. So figure out what of your product eventually will be awesome when it's totally built out, but what parts could you do manually? Because again, like we didn't have that many, like today we can't, we have over 200,000 makers, over the world. I can't be building all the apps myself, but like when there was just 10 of them, it was like, oh, okay, like, you can actually, build with them. So certainly I would say figure out what you can do manually instead of it being automated. And some things you can't, right? Because it's like, well, I had to have at least something that would make it for me, right? So then figure that out, and then go find go out to where your customers are, find some people that are actually willing to pay, start getting some, real use cases there. And then there definitely will become a time when it is a tricky decision, right? But you'll know it's the right decision once you've done a few of those and it starts to becoming more and more smooth, right? Where when you talk to them, we don't need any more features, or you're able to build it faster and faster. But there will come a point where you have to, unfortunately, stop that side of like the manual kind of service side of things. And then it's hard because like you're like, well, we're helping people and we're kind of we got some customers and some money and this feels great, but you kind of have to stop and say, okay, what are now the things that need to be automated or changed, right? So in our case, then we had a really deep like empathy and understanding of like what was difficult to use, because like I was using the product every day for hours and hours. Like I really knew like, okay, we should change this to make this easier. We should change this to make this easier so that other people could to do it. So then we kind of went into this mode of, okay, now we're going to have this kind of few month period where we're just making it easier and we're not going to take on any more customers. And again, that was difficult because obviously you want to keep showing growth, but you pause for a second, we made it easier. And then when we launched publicly, why it was also great is because we had real customers before we even really launched, right? So then we had amazing case studies that, were up there right away. People could see them. It was like, whoa, this is like a real thing. And it was like, no, it is real. Like we have like people that have gotten true value out of it. So I think having the social proof right away when you launch is amazing. And we did that still in a soft, open way, right? Other people could try another approach and that could work, but certainly what worked for us was like we were public that whole time. Like you could come at the time, you could come to $1.com and you could play around with it. Again, we weren't trying to like spend tons of money to get people there or really like market it, but you could come. Other people have tried going in beta and like silent types of approaches, and again there are pros and cons to that, but for us, being able to have people jump in there and see that, like watch them, we have there are some great programs, especially for SaaS companies out there, like Full Story, where you can kind of watch and see what people are doing, which is really helpful for tracking down where those issues are. So I guess kind of to recap there, find some way to get someone to at least pay you to really go through it. Or if you have to do it for free immediately, kind of do it for free, but find some way to do that. Keep doing that enough times until you like find the patterns and you're like, okay, like, I get it. Again, you need this one thing, or like what, like until it becomes, so obvious, and then figure out how to translate that into, now you create all the feedback that you just got from all those real customers, and then you can launch with great case studies.
Yeah. And, sometimes people underestimate this, but having case study when you launch, especially if you want to do any kind of press, nobody's going to pick up on a launch without an example of a real life use. Yeah. So you kind of, if you want to make noise around your launch, you do have to have a soft launch and a pre-launch.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And, for sure you could do that. from a beta sense, where people then try to build it up and be like, here's our beta, and get a bunch of people to join as well. And that's another strategy for us. We kind of took the other approach where it was always there. Instead, we just weren't really trying to shout it from rooftops until we felt like we were ready. So
Yeah.
kind of like two different approaches there. Certainly has their pros and cons, but the soft kind of launch really worked well for us. So yeah.
Right. All right. Well, David, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for letting us kind of tell our story any way that we can help out founders. We have tons of founders on our platform as well, so any little nuggets of maybe wisdom that I can share from our crazy ride to help anybody out, wish you all the best on your journeys. Fun thing bringing something to life. So
It definitely is. All right. Thanks, David.